Good morning, everyone. We're in the book of Isaiah. We're in chapter 36 and 37. This is another historical part of the material that Isaiah is really focusing on a lot of predictions of different nations and ultimately on the Messiah. But there's two sections in 7 and 8, and then here in 36 through 39 that are more like immediate historical events. I think there's some connection there, just as an aside. We're going to have a prayer in a second, but I'm not sure of this, but I think there might be some sort of connection. Here's Ahaz, and God is assuring him that he'll be with him, and he doesn't trust God, and he rejects that. And then there's Hezekiah, where now the same kind of thing. There's threatening, and yet Hezekiah turns to God and trusts in God. And I think there's a contrast there that's meant to be made. I'll just throw that out there. In case you're going through Isaiah and you're trying to figure out why these passages are here. I think that might be part of it. Anyway, let's begin with a prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity you give us this morning to come together, to open your words, to learn more about you and about your plan of salvation and what you would have us do in our lives, to be pleasing to you, to be a blessing to others, that we would live a life that shows gratitude to you and respect for you and a love for others and their souls. We thank you so much for this time we have to study your words. We thank you for the opportunity we've been given today to come together and assemble, to worship you and to encourage one another, and to grow in our faith, and to be recharged to go out into the world and to serve you better. We thank you that you are so patient and loving towards us, and we thank you that no matter what we do, that you are ready to forgive us if we humble ourselves and return back to you. Help us to turn away from sin, to never need your mercy, but Father, we know that that's a part of living in this world, that we are going to be tempted and we will fall short of your glory. We thank you so much that you sent your Son. It's in his name we pray. Amen. All right, so Isaiah 36 and 37, I wanted to give a brief overview of some of the details. Let's see if this works. Good. Okay, so just as a reminder, this is the region of the Jews. You had a northern kingdom of Israel and a southern kingdom of Judah. And then we see all the nations surrounding it. Down here is Egypt. Then you have Edom, Moab, Ammon, Aram or Syria with the capital of Damascus. You have Phoenicia up along the coast and the Philistines along the coast down here. And then way up here is Assyria. All right, that's the general thing. What I have here on this map is, again, here's Assyria coming down. Assyria's already taken first the northern kingdom, the northern part of the northern kingdom, which is like Galilee. It took that and then across. Then it came in and took all of Israel in this period, and it took also along the coast here, it took much of Philistine, Philistines. I guess it took a lot of this area, and this area is coastal. And so it was easier to take the coast, and it's harder to take the mountains, which is where the Jews were living. So even it sounds kind of weird, but Assyria kind of had, in a lot of ways, had the southern kingdom of Judah kind of surrounded. And so they come down through here, just as a reminder. Okay, the next slide, as a reminder of the timeline, here is 722, 720, 730. Here's where Israel fell, the northern kingdom. So Hoshea was the last king of the northern kingdom of Israel. Israel was overall very wicked. There's really not many kings in the northern kingdom. You could say much that was good about them. There's probably something, but the Bible presents them as pretty much consistently wicked. And then the southern kingdom of Judah, there were at least some kings that were described as fairly righteous, and Hezekiah is one of them. I have here Isaiah prophesying through this period, somewhere back in the reign of Uzziah, and somewhere probably at the end of Hezekiah or the beginning of Manasseh. We don't know exactly how long he prophesied. But it's basically through this period. What we looked at before was a lot of the details as Isaiah in the early chapters with Pul or Tiglath-Pileser III, the Assyrian emperor. And then Shalmaneser came and took Jerusalem. Sargon, he dies, and Sargon, I think the way history has it, he took credit for the destruction of Samaria. He might have been involved in it. But anyway, these two guys were around when the northern kingdom fell, right here. And then about 20 years later, Sennacherib comes, and he's going to come against Judah. That's where we are now. So it's about 20 years later. Israel's already fallen, and even then there's been sort of like waves of other things that have happened with Israel. It wasn't all at once that it fell. And even then when they got taken captive, it seems like waves of other peoples got brought in at different times to repopulate the northern kingdom section. All right, and so then we have now here Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and then Hezekiah. He's coming against Hezekiah. Now, part of the problem seems to be that Hezekiah started rebelling against Assyria. Not so much they were paying tribute, which means at least you're kind of acknowledging their power and you're submitting to them. Hezekiah, along with some other nations, it seems like Hezekiah, from Assyrian records, it seems like Hezekiah kind of encouraged a rebellion and got some people together to rebel against Assyria, and Assyria comes in and starts stomping on them because they're the power, and if somebody does that, they're going to have to show them that they're going to lose. And so that's where we are in the story in Isaiah 36. I'm going to read just some of these verses, 36 and 37, to give you the overall view, and then what I want to do is show you, this is one of my favorite parts of the Bible history, is how amazing what happened is here. That God stopped this powerful Assyrian emperor in its tracks. Do you remember what the one event was that stopped Sennacherib from finishing the job? Kind of an amazing event.
One angel killed 185,000.
Yeah, there was that little night where 185,000 of his army was totally destroyed, and he went home, and that was the end of it. And that's what this story here is describing. How Isaiah told him, this is what's going to happen. You will not have to worry about this powerful emperor and his army. It's going to be over. I'm going to protect a remnant of people. And that is really strange to see that happen in history. But the thing is, people would say, well, this is just the Bible making up stories. And you would be surprised how many people want to say that. Even people that are historians and archaeologists want to say that. But this point in history is so well corroborated by historical documents, by archaeology, and it proves exactly what the Bible says happens. That there was a powerful emperor that came, they tried to take out Judah, and they failed. And that has to be explained. And the Bible explains what's the answer. Well, he said the angel. That kind of answers it. What's the explanation for why Assyria was only able to mostly finish the job? One word. God. God is in control, and God said otherwise. So, anyway, in Isaiah 36, we're going to read a few verses, 1 and 2. It came about in the 14th year of King Hezekiah. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. We see from other details that he probably took just about everything in Judah except a few of the major fortified cities. And now he's going to go after those couple of fortified cities. And in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, if we just go back, let's go up there, good. In the 14th year of Hezekiah, it's very difficult to understand where the 14th year is because a lot of these kings co-reigned with their father. So Hezekiah likely was co-reigning with his father for a while. That's uncertain. There's some difficulties in that. But sometimes it says from the 5th year of his reign, and then it says a different number. And you say, well, how could that be? Sometimes it's starting from the beginning of his solo reign. Sometimes it's starting from when he was co-reigning with his father. And some of that's debated. So anyway, in the 14th year, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. And the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh from Lachish to Jerusalem to King Hezekiah with a large army, and he stood by the conduit of the upper pool on the highway of the fuller's field. So here's the story, and I'm going to go back and I'll show you another diagram later, but this one has it too. You have the city Lachish here, and then you have Jerusalem. Okay? And so Lachish is one of the best fortified, maybe the most well-protected fort in all of the southern kingdom. And what has happened is, this was earlier. Now Sennacherib comes down, and he's going to deal with Judah and some other peoples that were in league with him. But he's going to come down and deal with Judah. So what he's done is he's taken most of the cities of Judah, but now he's got Lachish, a little place called Libnah, which is still fortified, in Jerusalem. And those are like the last ones. And so he's at Lachish, and he's dealing with taking down that wall and then destroying them. And then Jerusalem's next. So he's on the way to destroying Lachish, and he sends this official, Rabshakeh, to Jerusalem. And basically the message is, look, we don't have to waste all our time here. If you don't just submit to us and give up, you're all going to die. But if you'll understand that we're going to destroy you if you don't submit, then why don't you just give up now, and I'll let you live, and then I'll deport you, but you'll have a place to live, and everything will be okay. Otherwise, you're going to be destroyed. So it's putting the fear of, we'll say, the fear of Assyria into the hearts of the people of Jerusalem to try to get them just to submit. It'd be a lot easier than having to go and fight the city and lose a bunch of men and a bunch of time. Just get them to submit in the first place. So this is his pitch. It's really fascinating what he has to say here. And if you haven't read it, you should really read it. Here's Rabshakeh giving his argument, and really a sophisticated argument. Just shows you people back then were just as sophisticated now in their thinking and their reasoning and their manipulation. And so anyway, verse 10, he says this. So this is chapter 36. I was going to read 6 and 7 too. Behold, you rely on the staff of this crushed reed, even on Egypt, on which if a man leans, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who rely on him. All right, so the first thing he says, okay, well, who do you have on your side that's going to help you compared to our army? You've got no one. Oh, you're going to rely on Egypt? Egypt cannot protect you. It's like if you got a staff and you're going to use that staff like to keep you from falling when you walk. It's a crushed reed, and all it's going to do is when you lean on it, it's going to break and it's going to pierce your hand. It's useless. It's worse than useless. Egypt can't help you. That's the first thing. They are no match for us. Now the second thing, verse 7. But if you say to me, we trust in Jehovah our God, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah has taken away, and has said to Judah and to Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar? Which is really kind of crafty. He's saying, think about it. Your God can't be too happy with you. Hezekiah has destroyed all your God's idols and altars and respectful places. Hezekiah is really against your God. So how is God going to be with you? Now that's not the truth, but that's the way people viewed it. So he's using that against them and to try to maybe separate people from Hezekiah, create doubts, and get them to submit. So what is he saying? Egypt can't help you, and your God can't help you. Later on, he says, how do I know that? Because we've, as a nation, Assyria, my fathers have conquered, and he was conquering. We've conquered all these different nations, and you know what? Every single one of their gods didn't help them. We destroyed them all, and we're going to do the same thing to you. So what has this guy just done? He's equated all these nothings with the Creator Jehovah, and saying, say, you're just like one of those other nothing gods, and you're going to be destroyed. Big mistake, probably. But in verse 10, have I now come up without Jehovah's approval against this land to destroy it? And Jehovah said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. So he's saying that God gave him the permission or the responsibility to go up against. We don't know if that's true or not, sometimes there's hints in the Bible that, okay, maybe that was what was said. But he's claiming, yeah, God told us to come and do this. It's with his approval, which may have been true. As we go down further in the chapter, look at verse 16. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me, come out to me, eat each of his vine and each of his fig tree, drink of the water of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards. But beware lest Hezekiah mislead you, and saying that God will deliver us. Your God cannot deliver you, and you might as well just give up now, and at least you can survive this. That's the message. All right, in chapter 36, verse, let's see. Okay, I'm going to write to chapter 37. Verse 1, when King Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes, covered himself with sackcloth, and entered the house of the Lord. Again, what's his response? Turn to God. So he decides he's going to go to the temple humbly and appeal to God. But he also sends his servants to Isaiah. So he sends Eliakim and other servants to Isaiah. And in verse 3, they tell Isaiah, the king is saying this to tell them, thus says Hezekiah, this day is a day of distress, rebuke, and rejection, for children have come to birth, and there is no strength to deliver. Perhaps the Lord your God will hear the words of Rabshakeh, whom his master the king of Assyria has sent to reproach the living God, and will rebuke the words which the Lord your God has heard. Therefore offer a prayer for the remnant that is left. So the servants of Hezekiah go to Isaiah and say, this is what's happening, can you please pray for us? And there's Hezekiah also in the temple, humbling himself before God. And verse 6, Isaiah has a message. He says, thus says Jehovah, do not be afraid because of the words you have heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Behold, I will put a spirit in him, so that he will hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. So basically, don't worry about it. He's threatening you. It'll never happen. That's the message. And verse 8, I don't know if there's a little change in time here, but Rabshakeh returned. So he goes back to where the battles were, I guess at Lachish, and found the king of Assyria fighting against Libnah, which means now, it doesn't tell us, but apparently Lachish fell, and they're on to the next fortified city, Libnah, which is the last one before Jerusalem. So now it's even more certain that they're coming for Jerusalem. They just took out the best fortified city, Lachish. At least that's the impression given here. For he had heard that the king had left Lachish. So there's only two reasons why you'd leave the city. You give up, or because it's defeated. When he heard them saying concerning Tirhakah, king of Cush, he has come out to fight against you, and when he heard it, he sent messengers to Hezekiah. So, by the way, in Egypt, there's this group of kings reigning that are Cushite kings, which are like southern Egypt or Ethiopia, Sudan kind of. It's really Sudan, I think. But anyway, one of them is Tirhakah. By the way, there's actually things you can find out about Tirhakah. There's archaeological evidence for him. And there's some evidence of this battle that occurred where Egypt, this Egyptian Cushite king came up and fought with Sennacherib. But Rabshakeh and Sennacherib have some words for Hezekiah. Egypt's coming up, but don't worry. They're nothing. We're going to take care of them. We're coming back for you. Don't think that you're being saved here. It's not going to work. So, in chapter 37, he lets them know, he says, Hezekiah, don't let your God in whom you trust deceive you, saying, oh, Jerusalem is going to be protected. We're going to deal with Egypt and we're coming back for you. Verse 12, did the gods of those nations which my fathers have destroyed deliver them, even Gozan and Haran and Reseph and the sons of Eden who were in Telassar? Where is the king of Hamath, the king of Arpad, the king of the cities of Sephaim, and Hena, and Eva? Then Hezekiah took the letter from the hand of the messengers and read it. So Hezekiah gets this letter, and it's basically saying, Egypt won't protect you. We're going to deal with them, and we're coming back for you. And there's no hope for you. We've defeated all these other nations with their gods, and you're next. So this is a letter. Hezekiah has it. What does he do with the letter? People who've read this know what it does. What does he do with this letter next? Yeah, he kind of goes to the temple and he lays it before God. See what they're saying about you? See, here's what they're saying. So that's the verse 14 now. Hezekiah took the letter and he read it. He went to the temple, the house of the Lord, and spread it out before Jehovah. And Hezekiah prayed to him, saying, O Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, who art enthroned above the cherubim, you are God, you alone of all the kingdoms of earth, you have made heaven and earth. You're the creator. By the way, you see people saying this over and over again. When there's something powerful, there's a lot of fear or danger or impossibility facing them, what the first thing they do is remind each other, God, you're the creator. If you can create, what can you do? Anything and everything. And that's like in Acts 4 when the religious leaders are threatening them. The first thing they say is, you're the creator. You created everything. And so here, that's what he says. You're the one who created everything. Verse 17, listen. And verse 18, truly, O Jehovah, the kings of Assyria have devastated all the countries in their lands and have cast their gods into the fire. For they were not gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. So they have destroyed them. And now, O Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Jehovah, are God. In other words, give us a victory over them so they can understand and everyone else can understand that those other gods are nothing and you alone are God. And so Isaiah sends a word to Hezekiah as he's praying to God. So Hezekiah's praying, and Isaiah sends a message to Hezekiah. And he says in verse 21, because you have prayed to me about Sennacherib, king of Assyria, this is what God has spoken against Sennacherib, the king of Assyria. So here's what God is saying to Sennacherib. And again, I'm going to read it all. Down. Okay. Verse 22. This is the word that the Lord has spoken against him. She has despised you and mocked you, the virgin daughter of Zion. She has shaken her head behind you, the daughter of Jerusalem. Whom have you reproached and blasphemed? And against whom have you raised your voice and haughtily lifted up your eyes? Against the Holy One of Israel. In other words, you're really mocking not God's people, you're mocking God. Though through your servants you have reproached the Lord, and you have said, with many chariots I came up to the heights of the mountains, to the remotest parts of Lebanon, and I cut down its tall cedars and its choice cypresses, and I will go to its highest peak, its thickest forest. I dug wells, drank waters, and with the sole of my feet I dried up all the rivers of Egypt. Have you not heard? And this is the verse I want you to focus on, verse 26. Have you not heard? Long ago I did it. From ancient times I planned it. Now I have brought it to pass, that you should turn fortified cities into ruinous heaps. What's the message of that one verse? This is God's response to Assyria. What's the point of this message? Sorry? Well, yeah, that's certainly always going to be true. But what's the point?
You did what I wanted you to do.
Yeah, that's really true too. What's behind that even? Yeah, that's right. We see that earlier with he's the axe that God is wielding. But what's behind all that? I'm in control. I'm God, and if I want something to happen, it's going to happen. And I planned this long ago. This is not you. This is me in control. And that's what people start thinking, that I'm in control or we're in control or whoever. And this is saying, no, I'm in control. And how does God prove that? Well, he's going to humble them very quickly. So, verse 29, because of your raging against me, because your arrogance has come up to my ears, therefore I will put my hook in your nose and my bridle in your lips, and I will turn you back by the way you came. That's the message for Assyria. And then now Isaiah turns to to Hezekiah and the people of Judah, and he says, this is what I'm telling you. This shall be the sign for you, verse 30. You shall eat this year what grows of itself, in the second year what springs from the same, and in the third year sow, reap, plant vineyards, and eat their fruit. In other words, you're going to be weakened and devastated for the next couple of years because of what just happened, but by the third year, what's going to happen? Things are going to start returning to normal. You're going to start planting and reaping. Verse 31, the surviving remnant of the house of Judah shall again take root downward and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go forth a remnant, and out of Mount Zion survivors. The zeal of the Lord of hosts shall perform this. God says this will happen. It's going to happen. Therefore, thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come to the city, or shoot an arrow there, neither shall he come before it with a shield, nor throw up a mound against it. By the way, think about that. He's just taken most of Judah, and I think I've talked about this in the class before, but he's taken most of Judah, and now all that's left is, he's already got Lachish, Libnah is going to fall, and all that's left is Jerusalem. And then Hezekiah is being told, he won't even come to the city. He won't even shoot one arrow at the city. You don't have to worry about it. That seems what? Impossible, which is really always a lot of things people, when God says something, people go, that's impossible. But if God says it, what's going to happen? Exactly what God says. And so he's there, he's in the region, he's stomping. If he doesn't finish the job, he looks weak. You're not going to do 90% and then just leave after that. You're going to want to finish the job. But God says he won't even shoot one arrow at the city. And then verse 34, by the way that he came, by the same he shall return, and he shall not come to the city, declares the Lord. For I will defend the city to save it for my own sake and for my servant David's sake. And I wonder if it could be just because of the faithfulness of David, or it could be pointing to the son of David and his plan to send Jesus, or it could be both. But I think it's ultimately I'm going to save this city for the sake of my plan for the Messiah. And then he says, verse 36, then the angel of Jehovah went out and struck 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians, and when men arose early in the morning, behold, all of these were dead. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and returned home and lived at Nineveh. And it came about as he was worshiping in the house, that would be about maybe 20 years later, of Nisroch, Rosh his god, that Adramelech and Sharezer his sons killed him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Ararat, and Esarhaddon his son became king in his place. So that's the last thing. When I look at this thing, we'll move from here. But you have Sennacherib, he comes against Jerusalem here, he goes home, and then about 20 years later, he's killed by his sons, and another son, Esarhaddon, becomes the next emperor of Assyria. So that's the history we have in the Bible. All right, and the question is now, how does this fit to everything else? All right, so this is where there's going to be we spend the end of this week and into next week. We're going to be looking at a lot of the history and the archaeology, just because it's really important to see. It's very important to see that the impossible thing that happened here is historically proven fact. And it's really more than that. All right, so let's see. I'm just going to summarize what we just read in chapters 36 and 37. Here's Assyria. Basically, they say you can't rely upon Egypt. That's true. Or your God. Well, that's the problem. Submit now and survive. No gods stand against ours. Don't listen to Hezekiah, who says trust Jehovah. And Egypt's army, which is that emperor or pharaoh Taharka, can't save you. And then what does God say? Well, Assyria has spoken against God. Have you not heard that long ago I planned it? I will turn you back, not even 1 hour at Jerusalem. You will hear a rumor. You will return home and die there. And then God sends the angel that destroys 185,000 in one night. And you can imagine they just kind of go home with the tail between their legs, whatever number's left, and they never come back to Jerusalem. That is what God said, and that seems to be what happened. So, There's also another passage in Isaiah 10, and there's a few other details scattered throughout Isaiah, but I wanted to at least bring up Isaiah 10 again. That's the passage where it talks about, I'm going to use Assyria like an axe. So that's another one point to mention. You're being used by God. God is going to use your rebellion to bring about His will. Not your will, but His will. So He's going to allow you to do part of what you want to do because it's God's will, and the rest He's going to say, nope. So Assyria says, I'm going to destroy Jerusalem and her gods like I did all the other nations. And God says, no, I'm using Assyria to punish Israel and punish the southern kingdom of Judah. Don't fear the Assyrians, a remnant will escape. He will conquer much of Judah but not take Jerusalem. I'm going to send a wasting disease among Assyria's warriors, and he describes it like chopping down a forest or burning a forest, and then there would only be so few left that a child could number them. And then Assyria will be humbled and defeated. So there's other things in Isaiah earlier that are kind of referring to this problem for Assyria that's coming, and yet God using them for His purposes. All right. I'm going to change this now.
Hey, Greg.
Yes.
Are
Yes.
you going to get into where they are when these 185,000 died?
Am I going to get to where they are?
Yeah, because I guess in my mind, I pictured them outside of Jerusalem.
Right.
And that's where they died. But, I mean, they could have been at Libnah, or it could have been as they were going down to face the Egyptian army, or as they were coming back from that. I mean,
There's an interesting, I'm going to get to this later, probably next week, but there's an interesting thing that I'll show you. Assyrians made forts, like a lot of people, but their forts were oval. And there's a guy in the last year that discovered the Assyrian fort outside of Lachish. And because of that, they found ruins in Jerusalem that were likely to be the Assyrian fort. And where it tends to be is, which is another prediction in Isaiah chapter, this is still not certain, but it's in, I believe it's in 10, I think it's in 10. Yeah, it's still in 10. Isaiah 10 verse 28, it talks about here they come, and they're coming closer and closer to the city, and then yet today he will halt at Nob. He shakes his fist at the mountain of the daughter of Zion, the hill of Jerusalem. He's going to get really close to Jerusalem, and that's it. And Nob is the place where they think they found an Assyrian fort that would have been from this time. And it would be interesting if that was the place where, because they had an army and they're getting ready to take Jerusalem. It seems to be near Jerusalem, but yeah, we don't know exactly where. But there's a connection there that the fort, there was an Assyrian fort at this time outside Jerusalem, and part of the reason why they found it is because they found a fort, an oval fort near Lachish, that told them what to look for Assyrian forts. Anyway, so yeah, maybe. All right. So the other thing that I want to mention. Okay, let's just go to the next one. All right. This is not really related to this time period. It's about 20 years earlier when Israel fell. There's something called the Nimrod Prism, and it's about 720 BC that it's describing, and it was made maybe like 10 years later. But this thing describes a massive deportation of the Israelites following their defeat at the hands of King Sargon. At least that's what Sargon claims. Maybe it was Shalmaneser, maybe it was Sargon. And then there were people brought in to repopulate the area. I repopulated Samaria. So there's talk of, and then treating them like citizens and taxing them and everything. But there's talk of taking people away and bringing other people in. And that's one of their records. Okay. A lot of these things were found in something called the Library of Ashurbanipal, which, by the way, Ashurbanipal is the guy right over here. So he's the next emperor of Assyria, and he built up this library, and all these tablets they found buried, and they've got a lot of stuff that they got out of those tablets. Yes, Ray?
I wonder, was that writing on that song?
Excuse me? Yes.
How in the world did he write that song?
Well, again, they get these little wedges that they stick in there, and those wedges, based on how they're angled and the shape of them, they're letters. And so they get their whole little story about certain things of events of history on these stones. And I had a picture before me, I'll get another one, showing you close up the wedges. Matter of fact, there's one of the pictures I have in this set, that I think you can see the wedges at least somewhat clearly. All right, so these things, again, these are not directly connected to our story, but it's still the same history. This is something, the victory stele of Sargon. And by the way, for the last 150 years, before 150 years ago, people said Sargon is a mythical name. Because what do they want to do with anybody that they can't find in the Bible? What do they assume? It's just made up. And what do they find out after time? Oh, no, there really was a Sargon, and here's an example. Well, Sargon, one of the things that they did, which when I showed you that the Assyrians came down and they took the coast where the Philistines are. And so one of the things that they did is in Ashdod, one of the Philistine cities, they know that the Assyrians came down at this time and took that region, and which was Ashdod. So they had these stones that they found in Ashdod, which is describing Sargon's campaign at that time. So they know, and there's not much that they can get off these. The writing on these is so faded that it's hard to tell. They've got a couple of words and phrases, so they know it's definitely Sargon, and they know that it was definitely his attacks, but they don't really know a lot from those. But they know that there was this memorial stone set up, and they think somebody came and smashed it to bits after Assyria lost its influence, so that they were just like pieces around that they found in different places. All right. But the point is, there's archaeology showing this time period. And Ashdod is a city that's not that far from Judah that was dealing with this. And Sargon is mentioned once in the Bible in Isaiah 20, verse 1. All right, so he's got, and also in those records in that library, he has his annals there describing his I don't know, I guess it's like his greatest achievements. And he talks about why he came against Ashdod. And because he withheld tribute, he wasn't willing to pay his taxes, so he came, he put somebody in charge. That guy didn't work out. There was a couple of things going on. Finally, he just came and he decided to stomp on him. And that's sort of what's going on. The annals explain that, but then these fragments reinforce the truth of those annals, that they were there and that they attacked and made the Philistines submit, at least Ashdod. All right, so this is where we start seeing things that are associated with this time. And I know some of you might have seen this before, but I think it's so important, I don't mind repeating it, and also there's a lot of people here that haven't seen them. But this, again, there's all writing on that, Ray. This same thing, is all writing. And they found a bunch of these in different places all around the empire. But some of these are like around his palace buried in the ground. So they were like underneath cornerstones or something like that. But there was also other ones they found. And so they found 3 whole ones and portions of 8 others. So this is something that's like and every time they found a portion, it lines up with the details on this stone. So they know it's like copies of the same thing. And part of this says, this is Sennacherib. Sennacherib's giving a list of all his campaigns. So like this, on 6 sides, this might be year 1 campaign, and then year 2 campaign, and then year 3 campaign. And you go through and he's got all these campaigns. And I stomped on this nation, I conquered this nation, I wiped out these people, I subjugated these, and then he comes to Judah, and what does he say? As for Hezekiah the Judahite, who did not submit to my yoke, 46 of his strong-walled cities I besieged and took them. This is a shortened version, but it gives the main details. 200,000+ people I brought away. Hezekiah himself, like a caged bird, I shut up in Jerusalem, his royal city. So that's describing not an attack of the city, but like a blockade of the city. So what apparently they did, and Assyria is known for doing this in other nations, is they didn't just come at Jerusalem directly. They surround Jerusalem, keep it unable to help destroy everything else. And when they're done destroying everything else, now they come for Jerusalem. So they weren't actually besieging Jerusalem yet. That's why they weren't even going to shoot one arrow yet. They were simply just controlling Jerusalem from going after helping any of the other cities. And then once they had, but notice what it doesn't say, because this was written maybe 10 or 15 years after he was in Judah. What doesn't it say? It doesn't say, I totally destroyed Hezekiah. What did it say? I shut him up in Jerusalem. If he had destroyed Jerusalem and humbled Hezekiah, what would he have said? I finished the job. That's what he said for every other nation. But this one, I shut him up in Jerusalem. And I took away a bunch of stuff. And I've also got this here in 2 Kings 18:4. It talks about Hezekiah being besieged. We already read that by Sennacherib. But I also got 30 talents of gold from him, 800 talents of silver, along with other stuff. And I brought it back to Nineveh, my royal city. So if you look at 2 Kings 18:14, just to show you some matching details. 2 Kings 18, if you look in verse 13, in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria, Lachish, saying, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear. So the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. And really, back then, gold was the big important thing. And notice it says, on this cylinder or prism which they have, which Sennacherib did, said 30 talents of gold. And what does the Bible say? 30 talents of gold. Now, the wording is kind of interesting. Like, in other words, there's a back and forth. Hezekiah is trying to appease Assyria, but he's also not willing to submit to Assyria. So he's giving money, hoping but that's not going to fix the problem. Assyria wants to finish them off. But that's kind of interesting. So it's really weird that this man, when you read the rest of this, okay, they have translations of it. When you read the rest of it, they were incredibly successful in humbling other nations and destroying in battle. So why is it you get to Judea or Judah and what? All they can do is shut them up like a bird in the cage. Sounds pretty impressive, not compared to everything else. The Bible tells us God is the reason. So next week what we're going to do is we're going to look at the rest of the archaeology. There's a lot of it that fits in and ties in to show that these are actual events. And what's really amazing is the amazing event of that 185,000 in one night is not mentioned historically by Assyria, which you wouldn't think they would. But everything points to something dramatic happened that stopped them in their tracks. And that is what the Bible is telling us, which means we can trust the Bible. So that's what we're going to spend our time on next week. Thank you for your attention.